Hey now, today we're going to take a look at Heart of Crown from Flip Flops. What, you say? You've never heard of Heart of Crown and the company Flip Flops, the world-renowned game publisher? Well, okay, this is going to be one of those agonizing reviews where if you end up liking what you see in my overview and my final thoughts, unfortunately, it's going to be very difficult for you to get this game. It is only available widely in Japan. In fact, there is not a translated version of this game. All the cards that come in Heart of Crown are in Japanese. I don't speak Japanese, but Board Game Geek has paste stubs, English paste stubs for all the cards, which are basically like little blocks of text that you slip into card sleeves with the original cards in order to supplant the text. So even if you can get a copy of the game, and you can get it on like Amazon, has some copies floating around in the third-party market, although it's pretty expensive and you have to import it, and you can get it in some places, but it is also going to require some work for you to actually play the game. So obviously if I put that much work into it and I track down the game, and if I put it on my top 10 deck building games list last year or earlier this year, I must like the game to some degree, so that's a bit of a spoiler, but let's go through it and I'll tell you why. So first off, the theme of the game, this is a deck building game. It's one of the games that's sort of I would actually say it's a bit of a hybrid between the Dominion style of deck building and Ascension style of deck building, where there's a lot of things that are deterministic, but there is some randomness of card layout as well. You are like a patron or some sort of government of a kingdom, and you're trying to nominate a princess to be coronated and become ruler of the land. So I guess you're supposed to be like the power of the throne, the power behind the throne in this game. You'll start off with some lands cards that give you some money, and ultimately you're going to try to buy military units, and you're going to try to buy more land, more expensive land, different buildings, different ships, stuff like that, all represented by cards that you can buy in typical deck building fashion. But ultimately what you want to do is nominate a princess from a set of 6 princesses that are off on the side of the board. If you can do that, not only will you gain the special power of that princess, but you'll also be able to create your own realm. The lands that you use to get that princess become a realm which you can actually stow cards in and put your victory point cards in, which then becomes the main goal of the game. Get a princess, make a realm, get to 20 points. The first person to get to 20 points and make it all the way around coronates her princess, his or her princess, and you become the winner of the game. Wow, doesn't quite sound like most deck building games you've played, right? It really is not. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at how the game is played. There's even more interesting things I didn't even mention. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think, even though you know what I think. Anyways, let's do it. The goal of Heart of Crown is to be the first player to get to 20 succession points. Those are victory points. If you can do that and get all the way back around to the start of your turn with those points intact and with no one else getting past that amount of points, you're going to be the winner of the game. But of course, that's a bit easier said than done. First, you need to nominate a princess and make a realm that you can actually generate succession points in. Sound a little bit weird? Well, what Heart of Crown is a deck building game. So at its basic, it's actually just a simple mechanism. If you're not familiar with deck building games, those are games where you start off with an inferior deck of cards. Every player, in this game goes up to 2 to 4 players, starts with that inferior deck of cards, and then you're going to use those cards to purchase on your turn better cards from either a random lineup or a set lineup of cards. Those cards go into your discard pile whenever you have to draw more cards from your deck, but there are no more cards there because you're drawing 5 cards every round. You shuffle up your discard pile, make a new deck, and continue to draw, which means you will eventually get those awesome cards that you had from before, and now you can do even cooler stuff with them and get even better cards with those other better cards that you purchased. So you're building an engine and continuing along, trying to chug along until you can eventually get as many points as you can, the most, and be the one with the most in order to win. So let's first go ahead and take a look at the inferior cards that you start the game with. First, you have these basic land cards, which are only going to get you $1, and they up in the top right corner, top left corner, excuse me. Anytime that you see this symbol and all the different cards have that symbol, that's the cost of the card. Now, you're never going to buy these basic land cards. They're just, that cost is just in the corner for some certain card effects that reference cost. But when you play this card, you're going to get $1. We'll just call it $1. Why not? Now, up below that, you see a little crown symbol with a red outlined number. Whenever you see that symbol, those reference succession points. And in this case, this is worth -2 succession points if it's in your realm, which we'll get back to in a minute. So this card is not very good. It only gives you $1, and it may be worth negative points depending on where it ends up. Even worse than that, you start off with 3 of these apprentice maids. Oh, you know what? Let me go ahead and say something right now. This game is originally in Japanese. This is an original Japanese copy of the game. So in order to make it into English, I had to do English paste ups using sleeves. That's why all these cards are sleeves, and usually I don't sleeve my games. So I put English text that you can find on Board Game Geek in the bottom of these cards. For most of them, like the Apprentice Maid and the Lands cards, it doesn't matter. But for most of the other cards, as you can see, there's a lot of text, so you need some English paste ups. Anyways, moving on. The Apprentice Maid is even worse because she doesn't even give you $1, and she's worth -2 succession points if she ever ends up in your realm. Essentially, she's a junk card that's just taking up space. Now, over on the side here, I know it's kind of hard to see, but I have cards that are always in play. These are cards that you'll always have the opportunity to purchase because every game will have them off to the side. So you have curse cards. Actually, you're never going to want to buy these. These are junk cards that you may be forced to take. Much like the Apprentice Maid, they do nothing beneficial for you, but at least they're not worth negative points if you have to put them in your realm for some reason, which I don't actually think is possible. But anyways, then you have better land cards. You have, I think, I actually didn't get English paste ups for these, but I think they're called like villages and towns. So these will cost you 3, and it's going to get you 2 income instead of 1. So it's strictly, and there's no negative points, so it's strictly better than the basic lands that you start off with. And then even better than that, I believe these are called towns, where you get, for 6, you get a card that gives you 3 currency. Are you wondering what these arrows are? I'll get back to that in a minute. Then you have succession cards. Green bordered cards are succession cards, and their function is to give you points, but positive points rather than negative points. So the court maid here costs you 3, and she's going to give you 2 succession points if you can get her into your realm. The Duke is going to get you 3 points, and it costs you, or actually I think this is a Senator, costs you 5 but gets you 3 victory points. And here is the Duke. He gives you 6 succession points, but he costs you 8 to purchase. Now, I keep referencing a realm and putting your succession points in it. So I think at this point, we'll go ahead, before we go into what all the rest of these cards are and what they do, we'll talk about how you get a realm and how you eventually get to the point of winning the game. And what you need to do is nominate a princess to be the Lord, Ruler, Queen of the realm. There are 6 princess cards up here that I have atop. I know it's kind of hard to see, that are always in play. And at any point during the game, instead of buying one of the cards that's off to the side or buying one of the cards that's in the lineup, you can buy one of, well, it sounds weird to say it that way, but you can, we'll just say buy one of the princesses. When you decide to buy one of the 6 princesses, which you can only do once per game, every player will only have 1 princess, you're going to put her off to the side and of your play area. So you'll have your deck, you'll have your discard pile, and then off to the side you're going to have your realm. And up to 3 lands that you use to purchase her have to be put off to the side together with her. So let's say, for instance, I actually managed to get the 6 currency that it costs to get any of the princesses. They're all the same cost. And I used 3 of my basic lands in order to do that. I'm going to put all 3 of my basic lands off to the side with her, and that constitutes my realm. Now, it always is the highest lands that you use to purchase her, actually. So if you had bought better lands like the town and the village, and you used those to purchase the princess, those would be the first ones to go out amongst the 3 that you have to choose, and those will constitute your realm. This is important for a couple of reasons. First off, once you have a realm, now you can begin to stow your succession points, and that's the only way they count for the end of the game. So in other words, you need to have a princess in a realm before you can even consider winning the game. And on your turn, you can spend your whole action to put as many succession cards as you have in your hand into your realm, and there's no limit to that. You just put them off to the side as usual. The other benefit of a realm, however, is that they'll let you stow cards. On your turn, if you don't want to play a particular card that you have, you may have the option of stowing it on one of your land cards. But you're only able to, first off, you can only stow action cards, and second, you can only stow it on a land that is equal to or greater in cost. That's why it's important. That's one of the reasons why they actually show the cost on the basic lands, because there's very few cards that cost 1, which means having basic lands over here is not a good thing. Not just because they're not good for stowing cards on, but they are going to be worth -2 points so long as they're in your realm. But it is good that you at least get those crappy cards out of your deck. Now, if you were to purchase the better lands and those go into your realm, that would be even better for you, and it will let you stow better cards later on. Now, let's talk about the princesses a little bit more, because they all give you a different special ability when you have them. So we'll just go through them in order here. You have Bergamot here, and I'm sorry, I don't have pace ups for these. I just have little notes off to the side. But Bergamot, you can discard a non-curse card from your hand to retake any one action card from your discards once per round. This will make a little more sense as I describe the rest of the game. You have Lao Lily. When you nominate her, which is you acquire her from the lineup, you may gain 5 Court Maids from the market, the cards that are worth 2 succession points. I forget what her name is. There she is. Lula Nasaika, who has a very impronounceable name. She's very simple. You simply get 6 succession points when you nominate her and put her and start your realm with her, which gives you a little bit of an edge right off the bat for victory. Then you have Clam, who lets, when you have her, all the cost of all cards are reduced by 1 for you to a minimum of 1 for the rest of the game, which is very, very powerful. Then you have Flamaria, who's arguably even more powerful. When you nominate her, you may gain 2 cards costing 5 or less from the market. The market is every card in the lineup and every card over there to the side. And also, villages do not enter your realm. The villages are the little basic cards, so it's good that those don't go into your realm sometimes. Well, really, they are. Then you have the twins here, the Lane and Xion. When you nominate the twins, you put you put counters on the card equal to the total number of nominees in play. So that could be anywhere from 1 to 4, depending on the number of players and how fast other players nominated princesses. Remove a counter from the card to take another turn, maximum of once per round, which is pretty amazing when you think about it, if you use her correctly. So let's go ahead and say that you have set your realm. Now you're ready to start eventually stowing succession points. But I did get a little ahead of myself. Let's talk more about how the basic structure of the game is played, but at least now you know what the victory conditions are. So the turn is going to be broken up into phases, and one of the phases is simply to play cards from your hand. So at the end of each round and at the start of the game, you're going to draw 5 cards from your deck, and then you're going to try to play those cards in order to acquire more and better cards in typical deck building fashion. So now, aside from the cards that I mentioned before that are always available for purchase, you have a lineup of cards randomized in the market. You'll actually construct this ahead of time. You'll pick, there's, just like in games like Dominion, there's many different types of cards that you could potentially use for the game. You're going to select 10 of them either by choice or at random, and you're going to shuffle them all together to make a deck. And then you're going to keep drawing cards until you have 8 unique cards in a lineup in the market. If you draw cards from the deck during this setup phase that are doubles of cards that have already been revealed, instead of discarding them, you stack them on the previous cards that have come out. So in other words, you're going to have 8 unique cards in the market at any given time, but there may be more than one of each card for you to purchase. They'll just stay out there, which is something that a lot of other I've never seen any other deck builder do. It's kind of a mix of Ascension and Dominion. And you can always purchase whatever card is out there in the lineup, and then it will be refilled from the deck until, of course, you have, unless you're already at a card. So if I bought a card that there's multiple copies of, another card wouldn't come out. But if I bought this Magic Ward over here, it would be replaced because now we're down to 7 cards. Now, the interesting thing about playing cards during your play phase is that you can theoretically play as many cards as you want, but only if they link together. Many of the cards in the game, including the basic lands, but not every card, have arrows going on either the bottom or the right side. You see this like wide, fat arrow here? So long as a card that you play has an arrow, you can continue the chain. So if I play a basic land, I can play another basic land which has an arrow, which lets me play another basic land. That's pretty simple enough. Some cards do not have these, like succession cards, and there's no reason you'd play a succession cards anyways. Or some very powerful other cards from the market, like action cards, may not have arrows on them, meaning that they have to be the last card in your chain. Some of them even have double arrows. So I'll show you an example of both. The Scout here is powerful because he has 2 arrows, which means you can continue a chain in, theoretically, both directions. If those cards have their own arrows, you can even continue on further. So having double arrows is a really good thing. It makes cards like the Scout very versatile, whereas cards like the, what's this called? The Buried Treasure card have no arrows, which means that's because their effect is so powerful that they're not going to let you continue the chain. So if you're going to play this card, it needs to be the last card that you play unless you don't want to do anything else for the turn. And that's essentially how chaining is going to work in this game. Now, once you get done playing all the cards that you want to play and acquiring gold and doing any special effects that might resolve, then you have one of 3 options that you can do in the next phase of the game. You can buy any card from the market, which is any of these cards or any of the cards in the lineup, following the normal rules. You can nominate a princess if you have not already done so, because you can only do it once per game. or you can choose to stow as many succession cards as you want in your realm. I've kind of covered all of this as I was explaining the rest of the game before. So that's really Heart of Crown. You're going to continue taking turns like this, playing cards, deciding whether to purchase or stow cards for succession. You're going to keep doing this until one player has acquired 20 succession points. At that point, they can choose to announce as a free action the coronation of their princess. Then play continues as normal until it gets back around to that player's turn at the start of their turn. If no other player was able to knock down that player in points and make them not eligible for succession, or if no other player was able to actually acquire 20 points themselves, then the player who announced coronation is the winner of the game. But if another player was able to announce coronation, the two players that announce coronation go into a sudden death match where they try to get to 30 points. I kind of disagree with this rule and think that you should just play, see who actually has the most points after both players announce coronation. But whatever you want to do, that's up to you. So the last thing I want to show you before we go to my final opinion is just some of the cool cards that come out in the randomized market. First off, there are two cards called the rare cards, of which there's only one copy of each, and they are awesome but incredibly difficult to get. You have the Castle, which costs you 11 coins, which is really difficult to get. But first off, if you choose to just play it as a card, and it does have an arrow here, most succession cards do not let you get any kind of currency from playing them, or link together for that matter, but you can get 3 money, but it also gets you 8 succession points should you choose to stow it in your realm. So if you don't think that the 8 is going to put you over the top and you have a little more time to spare, you may choose not to stow it as soon as you get it and just keep playing with it, using it for 3 money, but although that can be a risky move in case a player might be able to steal it from you. Even better than that, theoretically, is the Crown. That's the name of the game, Heart of Crown. It costs you 13, however, but it is worth 14 succession points, which is just ridiculously cool for that amount of points. Now let's go into some of the different cards that are randomized and that you actually have 5 copies of each should they be in your game. You have action cards like the Alchemist that let you draw 2 cards, which is not too bad. You have the Urban Development card, which it costs you 4. You get to choose one. You can pay $1 and exile a village card from your hand. If you do, you gain a town to your hand, which is really awesome. Or pay 2 and exile a town from your hand. If you do, gain a city to your hand, which is even more awesome. You have the Sprinter Horse, which lets you draw a card, which isn't that great, but it has double arrows down here, which means you get to play the card, and it's theoretically essentially giving you 2 more actions to do on your turn, plus it lets you draw a card for doing so. You have the, I never remember the name of these games, and it's hard to see, the name of these cards. Shifting Cultivation, you have to gain a curse, but in exchange for that, you get $2 for each village instead of 1, which is really cool, at least early in the game. Supply Unit is kind of a better version of the horse person that I showed you before. You get 2 arrows, 2 link arrows. You get to draw a card, and during cleanup, you can choose a non-supply unit action card in your playfield and place it face up on your deck. So if you played an awesome card, you get to put it back on top of your deck and theoretically use it again very quickly. The Moneylender gives you 3 and has an arrow. During cleanup, you take 4 loan counters. As long as you have loan counters, whenever you would gain coins, you have to remove those counters instead. So you get a lot of money really quickly, but it is going to require you to take a loan. The Adventurers, I like this card a lot. You pay 1 and exile a non-curse from your hand. If you do, you gain a card from the market costing up to 2 more than the exiled card, and I really like the artwork on that one. The Ninja, 2 arrows, gain the text effects of a non-ninja card in your discards. This card gains the traits of the chosen cards, which is even really better than those other types of 2 arrow cards I showed you. You have the Star Reading Witch. Peek at as many cards from the top of your deck as you have played actions this turn. Discard any number of them, return the rest in any order, then draw a card. Wow, these are getting successively better, these double arrow cards. Now you have attack cards, which will happen a lot in most games, actually. And these are always just going to affect your allies, and they'll have to either defend against them or take the negative effects. Not your allies, your opponents. All players reveal their top card. For each card, you choose whether they discard it or not. The Charm Witch. Draw a card. All the players reveal the top card, unless that was a curse, also the next card. All cards except curses and lands are discarded. You may gain from the market 1 card identical to one of the cards revealed. Here's the defense cards. You have the Castle Wall. It gives you $1, and when attacked, you can reveal this card. You reveal or discard one less card than your opponent's army card declares. So if it was an army attack card that affected you, then you might be able to protect yourself from it. But you also have cards like the Magic Ward, which will really protect you from any attack, although you have to put it on top of your deck afterwards, and it functions as a curse until you get it out of your hand. And then the last one I'll show you, because I think it's a pretty cool card, is the Succession card here, the Gossiping Duchess, because every kingdom has one of those. She's going to be worth 3 succession points, but more importantly, when you set her in your realm to count as succession points, from each opponent's realm, you discard a court maid, senator, or duke, which can just be nasty near the end of the game. So this probably went on too long, but I just want to show you a lot of the cool stuff that came in Heart of Crown. I'll just go ahead and say it right now because you're going to hear it in a second anyways. I love this game, and I hope that I did it justice with this with this overview. Let's get to my final thoughts. Okay, component-wise, I really love the artwork in this game, and I like it because, yeah, like when you're talking about the princesses and some of the cards that have pictures of the characters on them, like the maid cards and the different succession cards like the Duke and the Governor that have artwork, even though those are done in a typical anime style, it's actually really not that typical. This is more on the side of at the halfway point between goofy looking anime and super realistic looking anime. And I like that, and I think it's to the game's benefit because it's not as exaggerated as a game like Tanto Cuore, which means that people that don't typically like anime artwork might still give this one a shot. They wouldn't be too turned off by it, especially since some of the other cards, really, it's like the land cards don't look anything anime-ish at all. They look really, really good. So high-quality artwork, I really dig it. Again, it's all in Japanese, so that I would love to have an official English version of the game that had the graphic design and the artwork formatted for that. It would look even better. With paste ups, it kind of takes away from the beauty of it a bit, but still pretty good. And the card quality is good as well. Now, the theme of the game, most deck builders are not very thematic. I mean, going back to Dominion and even games like Ascension, you don't feel like you're like this powerful baron, land baron, or in Ascension, you don't feel like you're this mighty warrior. You're just buying cards, which has always been fine with me. I don't really expect my deck builders to have a ton of theme. I think the theme is a little stronger in Heart of Crown, though, because you're making this realm and you're nominating a princess, and there is more interaction between the players as far as these attack cards. It gives you just a little bit more of a feeling of you actually being a kingdom that is at war and is, I mean, this game isn't very warlike, but it makes you feel like you're a kingdom vying for supremacy and that you're actually trying to get this princess coronated and nominated. And so definitely on the upper end of thematic deck building games, below games like let's say Legendary, but above games like Dominion, which have no theme whatsoever. So I like that about it too. The mechanics of the game. I play a lot of different deck builders. They're my favorite. It's my favorite game mechanic, and I'm always inclined to try one when someone says, "Hey, you want to try this deck builder?" Yes. So I played a lot of them, and they always have some similar things in common aside from the core mechanic. You always want to call cards from your deck, and you're usually vying for points in some way, shape, or form. But what I like about deck builders is that, especially the ones that have been coming out in the past couple of years, they always do something just a little bit different. And I'm always curious as to how that one mechanic or a couple of mechanics are going to work. Well, Heart of Crown throws a few different things, like 3 or 4 different things I've never seen in any other game, throws them all together, and in one sense, when you first play it, you're like, wow, it's like a hodgepodge of different things that I need to learn, but once you get into it and once it starts to work, it all sings together pretty well, and I really, really love this game. I kind of played this game once, enjoyed it, and then put it in mothballs for a while because I got caught up in all this other stuff I had to review. I pulled it out again and played it a couple times. I love this game. The new stuff that this game does that other deck builders have not done, at least the ones that I've played, are amazing. And I played this with people who do not like deck builders at all, but they enjoyed this game because the cool aspect of nominating a princess, having a realm for you to control that you have control of. You can basically determine what goes into your realm, what land cards go there. You determine what cards you want to stow there for future turns. So it kind of mitigates the typical randomness that you have in deck builders and gives you an aspect of control upwards and above what those other types of games can do for you. And that is so cool. And there's all these little things like the link system where it doesn't seem like a big deal, but you really have to build your deck in that way. to make the most use out of it, knowing that you can play a bunch of cards, but only if you can chain them together. So it's not unlimited plays like a game like Ascension, but it gives you a little more more options than a game like Dominion, where you just have the one buy and have to play other buy cards. At least in this, your land cards can all link together and give you more and more. So I really, and I guess Dominion does that in some way, but it really works here, and it's really cool, and it dictates what cards you should be buying to get the most out of the cards that you already have. I really like the land system and how you can stow those cards away. That is a cool thing. You can't stow everything, but it's the cool sort of strategy that you have to have in how you can just try to get rid of your 1 land cards. You can get up to 3 cards into land cards into your realm. And your first inclination is to get rid of those land cards that are worth just -2 points and only give you 1 coin. Because even though they give you -2 points, it's like, alright, but at least they're out of my deck. But if you put really awesome lands into your realm, then you're going to be able to stow bigger and badder cards, which is a great thing for future turns. So it's another one of those deck building tropes, but it works really well here, where you have to decide where the pivot point is of, am I just going to try to rush to the finish line as much as I can, get a princess, and just try to get as many succession cards as possible? Or do I play a longer game, build a bigger realm, and make better plays over time, and get the princess only when I have to, when I can really make use of their ability? And that's the thing, too. You can get the princess relatively early. It's not too hard to get to 6 money in a turn within the first few rounds of the game. But again, you'll be putting land cards over there that might not be that good, but maybe you want to do that because some of the princesses have killer abilities. And that would be a complaint that I have, at least with this base set. You have all 6 princesses out, and there's only 6. You don't have any kind of variety. And some of them are clearly better than others, just clearly. The one where you don't have to put the negative lands into your realm if you don't have to, and then you get to purchase a couple of cards for free right away. The one that reduces the cost of all of the cards you purchase in the future by 1. Those are strictly better than some of the other cards. They're even better than the princess that just gives you, I think, 6 points right off the bat. That sounds great, but it's just 6 points. It's not going to help you get the other cards that you need to get points any faster. So a minor complaint that some of the princesses are not as good as others. Like when I played multiple games, I was the first one to buy a princess. I always gravitated towards that fire princess because she's really good. And I'm like, I forced myself to do something else just because I wanted to try something else. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But anyways, I do like the entire concept of it at least. Now, as far as how the succession works and, trying to get those amount of points by a certain threshold, I don't typically like race games. It works here only because by the time that someone gets close to 20 points, the other players should be nipping at your heels as well. Most games of this are pretty close, where people are within a couple of rounds, a couple of turns of winning by the time you win. And it really just rewards efficiency. How fast can you get to that point? And knowing that even if you get a lot of points, someone else might be able to get to them the same round that you announce your coronation. Now, the rule in the rule book is that if more than one player announces coronation at the same time, in other words, you announce, and then before it gets back to the start of your turn and you would win, someone else announces, that you have to play to 30 points at that. It's like a sudden death between those winning players to get to 30 points. I don't recommend doing that. It's not a big amount of points at that point in the game, but still, it drags the game out longer than it should be. So, in my opinion, and this only happened with us once, you should just play to whoever has the most succession points at that time, which in our game turned out to be the case. Like, I think I had 21, and the player who ended up winning had like 23 or 24, because he made a big play with a Duke at the end. So, that put him over the edge, and it happened to be a high value card. So, with that in mind, I think that's a better way. I think that still proves that one player played a little better than the other. Just because someone got to the 20 point first doesn't mean you should go into a whole sudden death round. Because another complaint I have about the game is that it can go on too long. Every game of this I've played has been a 2-hour game, which is long for a deck builder. It really is, but it's because there's so much going on. You have a lot of decisions to make, and because it's a race game. And because the game only ends when you, the game can end if I think the Dukes run out, but it's rarely, that has not happened to me, and it's probably never going to happen. It's really about getting to those points, and that can take a while. It can take a while for people to get their engine going. Man, there's a lot to talk about with this game. The way the cards come out in the lineup is interesting. I've never seen that before. That's where I said in the beginning it's like a mix of Dominion and Ascension, because you have a random assortment of cards that come out in a line of 8 cards, but then you stack up on the cards. So you'll have 8 unique cards, but you can have multiple copies of some of those cards. That is really cool, and it means that you're going to... It gives you a little bit of extra strategy, like, man, should I just diversify? Or there's three of those cards out there right now. Should I just try to get them all? You just don't know. But there's some cool things here. There is definitely, just like how the princesses, there's clearly some that are better than others. There are clearly some cards. It's a random lineup how you set up the deck, but clearly some cards are better than others. Supply unit is amazing. You need to buy every supply unit you can as soon as they come out, if it's possible. There's some cards like, I can't remember, there's like a Minister or something that's not that great. There's a culling card that's okay, but there's not a ton of ways to color your cards other than stowing them, so it might be worth it for you, but that's typical of any deck builder. Some cards are just clearly better than others. And again, the pivot point is, when do you go to try to get succession points and stow them away? Do you wait? Do you just try to get your engine going up even more? Load up on as many of the expensive land cards as possible? That's the strategy. It sounds cliche. And then there's those 2 awesome cards. Those are kind of game-breaking in a way. If someone can have a really awesome turn and get one of those awesome succession cards, the Crown or the Castle, that's just like amazing. If you can do that, it's not a guaranteed winner. Like one game I bought that card and the game ended up ending before I could even cycle it back into my hand anyways. But still, I kind of wish there was either more of those or that they were a little less powerful, something like that. But still, really cool. This game is great. It is one of my absolute favorite deck builders. If I do my inevitable second version of my top 10 deck building games, this is going to be much, much higher. I could see this with expansions, and I will be getting an expansion soon. I can see this going up to number 1, potentially. That's how good it is. There's so much variety here. There's so many interesting mechanics. It still gives you that fantastic deck building feel, but with all these extra little things that are just so cool. The linking and the lineup and the realm and the princess. Man, I just wish other games could take a look at this and see how you don't have to be a Dominion or Ascension clone. You can take that deck building mechanic and just make something great out of it. I'm sorry if you can't find the game. Hopefully you can if you like it, if you've seen it and think you would like it as much as I do. But hopefully some publisher like Japanime Games or Pandasaurus IDW picks this up. It deserves it so much. It is so good. If I had my own like board game Brawl Essentials line, this would be right at the top of games that I would put my stamp of approval on. That is Heart of Crown from Flip Flops. Highest recommendation.